Hi, I'm Jenny Nelson. I'm the Associate Director for Research Content at ASAE Research Foundation. I'm very happy to welcome you to ForesightWorks Live. The virtual discussion is designed to bring people together in conversation about the changes we're facing now and into the future. This program is grounded in our ASAE ForesightWorks research, but our focus here is identifying new and developing challenges, practical steps that professionals can take to tackle these challenges, and future possibilities for associations and our communities. To that end, we need your participation. As you watch the pre-recorded conversation, please use the chat, not only to ask questions, but also to share your experiences and ideas. Our panelists are also in the chat to answer your questions and provide additional insights. There will also be pop-up questions that will appear on the screen at regular intervals. These are designed to get your input about the biggest takeaways, and so we can get a sense of how everyone's feeling about these challenges. These questions and crowdsourced answers will be shared along with other takeaways after the event, so keep this in mind as you're responding. We would also love for this conversation to continue and expand beyond this session, so we'll be sharing the video of this conversation. A big thanks to Association Analytics for sponsoring the program and making this conversation possible. Thanks to our panelists for their thoughtful participation, and I'd also like to thank you for joining us and adding to this conversation. And on that note, let's get this conversation started.
Well, COVID-19 has definitely impacted everyone's lives, and some organizations have found themselves facing change, moving more rapidly. The need to evolve is in front of them, and some of the things they've been looking to do for maybe a very long time, they're having to react to quickly. So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about that with a panel of experts. My name is David DiLorenzo. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Association Analytics. I am joined by, as I said, an expert panel, and I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves and tell a little bit about why they're here and what they do in their day-to-day lives. And I'm going to start with Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie Conrad. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the American Nurses Association, and I run an amazing team of marketers and sales professionals. But more than that, we really focus on, developing deep relationships with our constituents and try and, create a lot of value.
Hi, I'm Dave Martin with the American College of Radiology. I'm Director of Marketing. I'm here to pay it forward in a sense from any knowledge that I can give to the association community, especially as we're dealing with some of the challenges of the pandemic currently.
Joe.
So I'm Joe Valina, the Deputy Executive Director for Membership, Marketing, Publications, and Sponsorships at NAFSA. We're the Association of International Educators located in downtown DC. We are facing particularly acute challenges during the COVID-19 because international education, as you can imagine, has been severely affected in terms of travel, movement, those types of things. We're navigating those challenges and really focusing right now on helping our members and the community navigate those as well.
Great. Well, welcome everybody to our panel, and welcome to our audience all over the country and maybe all over the world. We're going to dive right in and we're going to try to answer a lot of questions that people have been thinking about, things that we've seen out there in the online communities that are on top of mind as we have discussions with leaders and executives everywhere. So everybody's going to dive in and contribute to our thoughts. So, even before COVID-19, I think we're all aware there's been a lot of changes and challenges when we think about content, we think about data, we think about personalization and the things that are out there. So even prior to COVID-19, because we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on, what were already some of the major changes or challenges that were driving some shifts in your marketing strategies and how you delivered content to your members over the last several years or even the last several months? Because now it seems like we're pushing through this a lot faster, and the more prepared and the more conversations you had leading up to this, the faster you can evolve and even amplify some of the things you were looking at. So I'm going to start with you, Jackie.
Great. So we are focused on serving the 4 million nurses in the U.S. We also have a global constituency. One of the big shifts that we've seen is there are lots and lots of resources out there, not only for, research, but also for education. So nurses can get continuing education credits anywhere, and they can get them cheap. They can get them free. That was a big shift that we had seen. We also had seen that that nurses are on the go, kind of like everybody. Everybody's got a small computer in their pocket, and so really the shift to mobile when we looked at our web traffic, we see more than half of our traffic coming from mobile devices. So that was another big shift. So the ways that we tried to, kind of respond to that, and what we tried to do is we always focus on quality. So we don't do anything unless we can do it well. And so we try and deliver the highest quality education to nurses. And then the second thing is, before I came to the organization, I would say, or when I first got to the organization 4 years ago, there was a real focus on transactions. And I have tried to pull back from that and say, I really want to focus on engagement. So, how can I best serve your needs and really focus on a specific customer journey, and out of that, then drive kind of like loyalty. So, if I have the best information around a particular topic, then when it comes time for you to get your continuing education, or when it comes time for you to get certified, or when it comes time for you to attend an event, that I'm top of mind, which, is a lot harder to do than to say, buy this book or sign up for this webinar. So those are kind of some of the things that are driving the way that we think about, marketing today.
Dave, what about you guys at Theology?
In general, we're shifting from a strategy, let's say, of one-to-many communications to more of a one-to-one communications, and then combining that with data and analysis and better understanding what's going on. And when I say shift from one to many associations, including the American College of Radiology, where I'm at, we have a lot of communications that we need to do. We need to make sure members are aware of things, but we also don't want to simply take a strategy of spray and pray. And so it's getting smarter, using data, using better tools to be having more of those one-to-one communications, depending on how members engage with us digitally in particular. And so if we have a better understanding of how they're interacting with us, we can better deliver content to them that's going to be, focusing on being ridiculously helpful. So that's really been the major shift for us is from moving from one-to-many to strictly one-to-many to a mixture of one-to-many and one-to-one communications.
And finally, Joe, same question for you.
Sure. Well, I think we may be a little different in terms of we are right in the midst right now of completely reconfiguring our membership model. So we've added new membership categories, a new member category, a retired membership category, and then most importantly for us, a new group membership. We had a lot of folks that would kind of trade off memberships. So the organization would have a budget for 2 people to be a member of NAFSA. So every year they would trade between those people. So we looked into trying to figure out the best way to mitigate this and to give everybody access. And so the group membership option that we're instituting now has really been well received, but it's also changed completely the way that we communicate with our members. We have to be much more personalized and one-on-one to communicate that member value proposition. And so one of the ways that we're doing that, which is new for us, is a completely automated email touch base that goes through depending on where people are in the membership cycle. And to make things even more complicated, we moved from a yearly to an anniversary model for our membership. So everybody used to, the entire association would renew in July, but now it's when you come in, that's next year is when you renew. And so that is also changed the way that we have to reach out. And like Jackie said, engagement is such a key driver, especially for us in the membership side, that we want to make sure that we have that connection all through the year so that when it's time for renewal, people really understand what they're getting from their NAFSA membership.
Great. So as we're in a current situation, you guys all described great strategies the organizations have probably been working on for some time. Has the current situation with COVID-19 and the state of where we are today expedited your journey down some of these strategies, proven the need for some of them, or actually made you rethink that maybe we took a wrong direction? Anybody want to tackle that?
So I can just say that for us, the group membership was really good timing, if there is good timing in this COVID crisis, because a lot of budgets now are being reevaluated at the organizations that are our members, and therefore the more bang for the buck that they can get for membership dollars, the better that is. And so we were very happy to kind of have that coincide. Like I say, if there's a silver lining for us, that's probably it.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, this is about content and about how we reach them. How do you define your audience or audiences pre-COVID? And then how much do you use segment personalization to tailor messages for those key audiences? I'm going to start with Joe.
One of the things that we do is to really take account of where the people are in their membership journey with us. Obviously, if somebody comes in brand new, we want to ensure that they are seeing things that can give them an immediate bang for the buck when it comes to the value that they get out of their membership. And so we are using those automated emails to, for example, push free products that we give to members or free benefits so that they can immediately start getting a return on their investment. Throughout that cycle, we're really we have a new focus on the whole data perception data analysis. So we're watching the open rates very closely. We're watching the engagement very closely. And more important than that, we're working within a digital content ecosystem where we try to tie everything together in one way or another so that we push people from one media to the other to make sure that they're getting the information from us in the format that is most relevant and convenient for them. So that's also a big change that we're implementing now.
And you're getting the data that you need to be able to make those decisions almost in real time, if not shortly thereafter?
Yes. The issue, though, that we're having is tying all that data together. So since everything is digital pretty much, it's not a problem to gather the information, but there's still some manual processes that we have to do to take all the information from the different types of media that we're doing and bring that together in a cohesive dashboard. So that's still a work in progress.
So what are some of the advantages, and I'm going to asking you, Dave, what do you see as some of the advantages and disadvantages to the rapidly increasing personalizations and messaging and content that's reaching your audiences? And I see that getting exacerbated even more as everybody's staying home in front of computers and video chats all day long. They're getting inundated with content and things that are in front of them. So how do you feel, what are some disadvantages and advantages around this?
Well, I would say the advantage of moving to more personalized communications and humanizing, the more that we do that, the better. In particular, developing more of a relationship with our members and prospects, focusing less on spray and pray marketing. It's especially in COVID. Initially for us, we ratcheted back our communications dramatically. Our members are radiologists, and about half of them are on the front lines reading chest CT scans in hospitals. Then the other half are in private practice, which has seen a dramatic decline in the number of patients coming in to get elective imaging done. So mammograms have plummeted. So that one half is being dramatically impacted, where the other half is overworked, which makes a really odd situation to be in. So we've ratcheted back our communications, asking our members to open their wallets, while at the same time we've dramatically ramped up the amount of resources that we're providing to our members so that they can, navigate their way through the pandemic. I mean, we've pumped out a tremendous amount of resources. We have a whole resource center just for COVID-19, and we're really focused on being ridiculously helpful at the moment. And then at the same time, just ratcheting back and stop promoting in-person events, for example. We don't really know what's going to happen with many of them. Although just now we're going to start to release some of that. It's almost like we're all coming out of our houses a little bit. So we're coming out of our marketing house and communicating a little bit more as well.
That's great. Jackie, I'm going to ask you a very long question because it's going to be related to what Dave just said and some other things I wanted to ask. But we're so used to segmenting our audiences by straight demographics or sometimes regions or a lot of things we look at that are traditional segments, membership categories, things like that. David alluded to a point where, there's certain career things or in today's worldwide landscape of how they're being impacted by specifically COVID-19, that's a different segmentation. And do you feel like, you guys have some ability to segment your audience in different ways when you need to? And if you do, and I'm going to ask all of you guys this, I'm just starting with Jackie. If you do feel like you're having that capability now, what are the tools you're using and how are you doing it? And if not, what is kind of on your wish list of how you get there? Because I know you talked a lot about engagement, and this is kind of part of measuring engagement for that. Are you there in the moment of need when, or the right time when they're actually wanting to consume your content?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we are actually similar to Dave in that we have nurses who are on the front line of COVID and we have nurses who are being furloughed. And so, how do you speak to that audience and be relevant, right? You don't want to be tone deaf. You want to be very sensitive. We did something very similar where we paused all communication. We literally said, send no emails, post nothing. And we did that for 2 weeks. And it was hard.
Mhm.
As a marketer, like who lives for the outreach, we said we're not going to do anything for 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, we actually redid a lot of our things. So 2020 is actually the year of the nurse. The WHO, the World Health Organization, declared 2020 the year of the nurse and the midwife. And so we had lots of messages that were really celebratory, like it's the year of the nurse. And we had to dial that back and say, when the WHO declared that this would be the year of the nurse, this isn't really what they had in mind. Things are different. So, we had to take a step back. So, our traditional segments of kind of, based on age of kind of early career, mid-career, late career. And then we had 6 different buckets based on role. Like if you're an advanced practice nurse, if you're a student, that type of thing, that mold didn't fit anymore. We created a microsite specifically for COVID-19 with lots of resources and information for nurses. I mean, obviously the big thing for nurses who are on the front line is PPE. So making sure that they had enough and what to do if they didn't. And, the advocacy piece of us through our government relations to do that piece. The big change for us, and we were doing this a little bit already, was really around being an outlet to collect stories. So, we wanted to hear from nurses, and we wanted to be the place that they came to tell us what was going on, whether they were sleeping in hotels and not going home to their family so they didn't expose their family to, I'm a surgery center. And so, basically I'm furloughed. So, trying to collect those stories and then use those stories to speak back to our audience about what was going on. So again, with our shift in thinking a few years ago from the transactional more to engagement, this felt like a much more comfortable space to interact and engage with our constituents, whether you're a member or not. I have resources that can help support you in your job. And so that's really the focus. Trying to be that outlet for those individuals and trying to support them is really what we're focused on.
That's great. I'm going to shift that question a little bit, Joe, and move it to you. So we started talking about that need, and I want to get into a little bit of the tools, and then I'll come back to Dave and Jackie. But when you think about what key channels you may be using, and given the amount of attention that so many platforms are getting during this crisis, everything from, on your side, Jackie, nurses doing TikTok videos, to what we're doing, here on video presentations, and the world using Zoom and Microsoft Teams, and there's just seems like there's no end to the variety of channels and how we're going to be able to reach people coming out of this. Have your priorities around different channels changed in the last couple of months, and what direction do you see going forward?
Well, I can tell you that one of the major changes that we've had, and we're not certainly alone in this, but the NAFSA annual conference was scheduled for next week, so or for late May, and so we have had to completely shift in terms of our channels to move that entire bit of annual content completely virtual. So we instituted a new meeting, the e-connection, which is certainly not as full ranging as the annual conference would have been, but offers a lot of really good content, both around the COVID crisis and general issues. That has been very well received, and also helps us play into the whole digital content ecosystem that we're using in terms of, of course, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter have been very important for us. All the social media channels have been really where a lot of our members are getting their most up-to-date news and updates surrounding international education and the crisis. And like Jackie, we started basically a microsite within our site that went over all of the COVID-19 messages and updates and news specific to international education from basically the very day one of when things started to happen. NAFSA is very engaged for our members in terms of helping them navigate visa challenges for students and for scholars and educators, and lots of regulatory types of guidance. So we were already ramped up in that expertise, but really having a dedicated COVID-19 area on our site was very helpful for our members, and the data shows that we had tons and tons of traffic going to that site. So we know that people were very engaged in that. Obviously, it's something that has kind of taken over their personal and professional lives. And so it feels good that NAFSA has been able to help them get the specialized information that they needed that really drilled down right to their profession.
And I would be remiss if I didn't ask Jackie or Dave both. I know you guys both use HubSpot pretty extensively to help connect and use some of these tools. Jackie, a little bit on HubSpot from you?
Sure. So we use HubSpot. We've been using it for about 18 months. It was a game changer for us. So, we were using 13 different tools that allowed us to consolidate those 13 tools down to one. Which helped obviously with the operations side of executing marketing. But what it really did is it allowed us kind of like a dashboard to be able to see the effectiveness of those campaigns. It's funny when you ask the question about like tools, and I would say like hands down, the number one tool like I can't live without is data. Like that is, people say data is king. I like to say data is queen. But that's the most important thing, because otherwise it just becomes a conversation about people's opinions, right? And I think this or I think that. And it has really allowed us to try some things and to see how it performs, and then make decisions, based on that.
For us, what's really interesting is that we're in a process, literally stumbling through at times digital marketing transformation. And that's a big, broad topic. It can mean a lot of different things. But in one way, what it's meant for us is developing a marketing technology stack and connecting various platforms to bring data into one place to be able to better understand how members are engaging with us. As much as I'd love to say we use HubSpot, I'm a HubSpot fanboy, as you know, David. We use Marketo. We're a larger organization, so we've evaluated a number of platforms, but Marketo is the better fit for us. So we've connected Zoom webinars to Marketo. We've connected SurveyMonkey. We've connected Wistia from a video perspective. We've connected Google Ads. So there's this ecosystem, especially with these marketing automation platforms, that you can quickly develop to give you a broader sense of the data and what's going on. So that we literally launched Marketo in December, and so we're 6 months in at this point or something like that, and stumbling our way through it at times. It's not perfect, but from a channels perspective, what's really helped us probably the most, and I'll give you examples, in our renewals, we're doing more paid digital advertising, and I've been with the college for 2 years. And before I came on, there was basically very little paid digital being done. And so last year we did a test for about a month for our membership renewals campaign and had a lot of success with it. So then we budgeted for this fiscal year a significant amount of money within our renewals campaign for paid digital. And so that we're running campaigns using Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, Google Ads, YouTube ads, various channels, and tweaking them, being really agile about it, and reviewing data on a weekly to every 2 weeks basis to see what's working, what isn't working, what is our cost per 1,000 impressions, what's our cost per acquisition, which is the real key number for me. The CPA tells us what does it cost us to get a member to renew, and what we found is we've gone anywhere from about $15 to $20 to renew a member, but when they renew, it generates about $1,100 to $1,200 for the college. So from a perspective of a budget perspective, you can do that all day long, right? But as over time, your audience starts to become smaller, so your number goes up, and so we'll cut it around 20 because then it just starts to jump up and become too high. We're also doing it with new members, and focusing where new members, it's costing us something more like $400 per acquisition. But if you look at it over the lifetime of a member, it's really a small dollar figure to generate new members. And so we're doing a lot of testing with channels, using data, working with a third party to help us implement some of these digital campaigns. And we've had a ton of success. And like Jackie was saying, it's like you can't argue with the numbers.
Right.
And if you're not measuring, you're not marketing, right? So it's all about data. It's all about being agile and being on top of your numbers. And then it's really hard. It's much easier to argue for budget. And our budget did not get cut. That's the best part. Our budget for next year for membership marketing did not get cut. When you would think, wow, we've got a kind of be much smarter about how we're using our dollars within the college, that's one of the areas where we fought. And so I know this is a little bit of a long-winded answer, but this is also a great opportunity for us to double down in marketing, not cut back on it, because data shows essentially that organizations that invest in marketing in downturns come out of it much stronger.
Yeah, I definitely see areas that are people that are amplifying certain areas of their organization. And Jackie, I love your comment that association analytics, we don't care who the king or the queen is, we just say data rules.
Yeah.
So, open opportunity.
Sounds good.
When you think of the various pieces of content that you developed as an organization that you have to market, that you guys are pushing out, how are you balancing providing member benefit versus business needs as an organization?
I think about it a little bit differently. So, I think traditionally, the drive is everybody should be a member, right? And they should, but they're not going to be. And so I kind of give that up right in the beginning. And so my approach is, I don't care if you're a member or not. Like, I just want to create value for you. And if the way that I create value for you is you can get some CE from me, that's great. And if the way I can create value for you is you want to get certified by me, then that's great. And if the way that I create value is you want to be a member, then that's great too. So I try not to focus on one particular thing. I try and look at throughout your career as a nurse, from the time you're a student to the time you retire. What are all the various ways that I can create value for you? And through that kind of creation of value, then you become loyal to me. And you come to me when COVID-19 hits, because you know that, I'm going to advocate for you on Capitol Hill, and I am going to have information, about PPE. Like I'm going to be your source. And so that's really, kind of what I focus on. One of the shifts that I've seen, you asked a little bit about like sacred cows. We have a tendency at our organization to really, really want to send emails, like dedicated emails for every single thing. And like Dave was saying, like, that's not the only way to reach people. And quite frankly, the more emails you send, the more opt-outs you get. So, I think one opportunity that this has created for us is like permission to, do other things. And because we wanted to be really sensitive about, what nurses on the front lines and what nurses who are furloughed are going through, that has really allowed us to do more content marketing. So, things like guest bloggers, video, and I mentioned earlier a little bit about like storytelling and collecting those stories from nurses. Well, in doing that, we're allowing nurses to actually tell our story about why, being at a magnet hospital during COVID-19, why that's better than, being at another organization. That has been something that we have done kind of around the edges, but it's something that COVID-19 has kind of allowed us to really push the envelope on.
Joe, did you want to take a stab at that question as well?
Sure. So I think our take is a little bit different than ANA's because we're set up a little differently. And so for us, the membership portion is really important. And so we are doing a lot more in terms of creating that membership value proposition and trying to reinforce that. So I think you were talking about, how do we balance between the business operations and the membership? For us, it's all really intertwined. We feel like by increasing our membership base, we're really increasing the financial wherewithal of the association in general, which is something that underpins everything that we do. We're very, very mission focused at NAFSA. And so we want to ensure that everything that we put out and do, and the way that we communicate and interact with the folks in the international education community really resonates with them. And the best way that we can do that is to bring them into that membership fold. And so we're doing a lot of things to try and to make that happen, which means that we look at some of our products as lost leaders. So we will push out a lot of content to make sure that people understand that this is something that you get as a member, and trying to reinforce that value. I think that it's important probably more now than ever to do that, because even before COVID-19, as we all know, membership in general in associations has been impacted by just the fact that people can get together in other ways than associations now in the 2020s. And so by really showing that kind of curated content and curated way to reach out with folks, we show that benefit of what we can do for our members and for the community at large.
Good segue too, because you talked a lot about, that member benefit and what's included in that member benefit. So when you kind of think about all these new models about how user-generated content, or how our members are getting together on these Zoom type of calls, and content is being created. I mean, I think the word content creator has a new meaning in today's culture than it did, even a year ago, with the amount of people on these platforms and generating their own content on YouTube and other platforms. Are you thinking of any ways to generate different ways to generate revenue from content, whether it's native advertising or different sponsorship opportunities, or what's free, what's included in membership, what might be able to be monetized? I'm going to start with you, Jackie, but I want everybody to answer this. What might be some new models that you guys are looking at, given the change that's happening? And even I'm going to set it another thing. I think one of the bars that's come down is the expectation of perfection and production quality everything, that we can monetize that which is not perfect. Think through that a little bit, and Jackie, I'll start with you.
Great. So when I first came to ANA 4 years ago, I actually was tasked with thinking about different business models. So that was something that I have really embraced and enjoyed. We are always looking for, new ways to partner with people. I think that creating something from scratch is unnecessary. So, that's kind of the model that I've followed. So one of the first things we did was look at careers and partner with your membership for like a career job listing site for nurses who are looking for jobs. So that was kind of an easy thing to implement. We also have a partnership that we just formed with Prudential around financial wellness, which fits really well with kind of how we serve nurses. We have an initiative called Healthy Nurse, Healthy Nation that focuses on making sure that nurses are physically healthy, and your financial health is a big piece of that. So trying to seek and find partners that can amplify what we're doing, that have alignment with our mission. Our latest partnership is actually with the Washington Post, and it's around local nurses and nominating local nurses to it's called Star Nurses, to highlight them in the local area. And so that's kind of a no-brainer for us, working with other brands that have really strong brands that have great reach. And so, that has really helped us to kind of amplify what we're doing, and also, diversifies our revenue streams. So that's, been an approach that's worked really well for us.
Dave, what about you?
Yeah, and I'll kind of maybe combine my answer with the sacred cow answer, because I think they go together. For reacting to business models and what are new opportunities for content. In particular, we're looking at, and I think lots of associations are looking at the impact to in-person education, in-person events. We have a 4-week course for third-year residents in radiology, and it's in person. So they come from all over the US to attend a 4-week-long course in Silver Spring, Maryland. And that's been upended, right? And it's the organization that manages that has really been happy and content with the in-person version of the event. So now we're moving it to a virtual event, some of which will be pre-recorded, some of it will be given live at the end of July. And it's what's really fascinating about it, I see it as like a massive opportunity to grow that part of our organization, because now we can, the more that we do on demand, the more that we create modules and lectures that typically were given only in person to 300 or 400 residents at a time in Silver Spring, Maryland, we can now monetize globally, right? We can offer this globally, which could massively expand the reach of that part of the organization. We also have an education center here in our offices in Reston that is also an in-person 3-day type courses. Radiologists would come in if they need to get a refresher in a certain specific area of the body and the imaging that's done. It's a really well-run and loved part of our offering. offering, but now it's also being postponed multiple times. And we're looking at also going online, and then you're talking about expanding the reach and the potential revenue that you could drive through these types of offerings. So for me, there's a real challenge, especially where we're looking at, instead of just US based, right? Now we're trying to go globally with this. How do we do that from a marketing perspective? How do we take advantage of this opportunity? And that's going to be a real driver for us in the next 6 to 12 months that I'm really fascinated by.
In front of you, Joe.
Sure. So, like Dave, we're taking more of an international focus. NAFSA has traditionally really catered to the North American international education community, and now we're really branching out in a very systematic way to do much more international work. And I think that really lends itself, obviously, to the digital format. As Dave was mentioning, there's no way that we could put on in face-to-face events all over the globe, but by using virtual technology, we're able to really bring those folks in. And I think tying back into what we were talking about before, we can also use the data to see where people are coming from and really focus our marketing in those areas that already have an affinity for what we're doing and we know are interested in the types of things that we want to put out. And so that's been really great in terms of targeting where we want to put our marketing dollars and ensure that we're making the biggest impact that we can. In terms of the whole look at non-dues revenue and all of that, we have a global partners program, which is a corporate sponsorship program where people come in, and we have different tiers of membership for that, and they get certain benefits for that, such as early registration for their booths at our annual conference, those types of things. And now we're looking to really kind of expand that concept into a more year-long type of sponsorship that spans everything across the association and doesn't focus so much on that one event. And we think that that's going to be a real winner for us and for our sponsors. We want to make sure that they are reaching the people they need to reach when they need to reach them, and we can do it more than once a year. So that's really a big change, a shift in philosophy, both for us and for the sponsors.
And you guys keep bringing up my favorite topic, which is data. So let's dive in a little bit and talk a little bit about data. And I'm going to start with you, Dave. You've mentioned how you use data a lot. What kinds of data are you actually using to inform content and marketing strategies? How are you using data to measure success? How are you using data to maybe engage teams across the organization that haven't traditionally used data, and helping them define and assess outcomes that they're looking for? So dive in there a little bit.
Love data. The fascinating thing about building a marketing technology stack and then pulling in data into one place and then being able to analyze how your members and prospects interact with you, it just allows you to be much smarter in your marketing and get away from opinions, as Jackie was talking about before, and just become much more like many for-profit organizations. And so, as an example, we're in the process now as we're going through our digital marketing transformation, really trying to focus on member engagement, but from a scoring perspective and a lead scoring perspective, and doing scoring based on how people interact with us online. So whether they download an ebook, whether they watch a video, whether they fill out a survey, whether they hit certain web pages and don't convert, what emails they're opening and not opening. We're moving towards now 3 funnels essentially that we're going to start to build to better understand the member life cycle, and they're around the acquisition funnel, the engagement funnel, and then a retention funnel. And that sounds kind of for profit, but it's moving. It's a journey. People can talk about it as a journey. I like to use the funnel metaphor, but the more that we can score people, understand how they're engaging with us, and then better understand how they're moving through, who's moving through, who isn't, what first-year members are engaging and scoring well, which ones aren't, which ones are great, therefore, for possible volunteer and or future leadership positions, right? Like, who do we need to focus on maybe communicating less with as opposed to more with? And as people are more unengaged, there may be a sign for less communications with them. So the more you've got data and visualization of data in particular, I think we can talk about data all day long, but if you can't make it easy to read
Right.
and look at and be able to in a dashboard quickly identify what's working, what isn't working, then, you just can get lost in data and it can become totally overwhelming. So I just think that there's so much possibility right now by creating an ecosystem, tying data together and then visualizing it. I think then you're starting to really kick some butt.
Yeah, and I think the evolution of that is then as you collect and combine that data to start to build that profile, that data-driven profile of each individual member, and then we get back into that personalization and that true member benefit at the individual member level that we all strive to achieve in the association space.
Yeah, and using data also to help develop personas, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
A great way to develop personas is literally in-person phone calls or phone calls or in-person meetings. But if you can combine that with data around how your categories, how your membership levels, how your personas are interacting with you, you can get a lot smarter.
So Jackie, we're talking a lot about data and all these systems, all these tools, all these channels are obviously gathering tons of data about our members, and we are starting to store it and combine those things together. How do you at ANA, how do you guys manage privacy and security around data, and what policies do you have around how data can be used for marketing and communications?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that took us a little bit of time to work out, quite frankly. So we have a fantastic legal team. Our Office of the General Counsel worked really closely with us to develop our privacy policy and make sure that we were, doing things correctly. So we actually are fairly conservative. And so in our marketing, we go by the US rules, but we actually exclude a lot of our, international friends. So unless they specifically have opted in, our first cut is, to pull kind of the international folks out to be sure that we're complying with, all the rules. Obviously, having technology helps a lot because in most email programs, you can have a message category. And so if somebody, unsubscribes from that message category, it does kind of the heavy lifting for you there. So, that's a big way that we do it. Also, the tool that we use, HubSpot, actually has an automatic suppression. It's something along the lines of, if you email somebody 4 times and they haven't opened it, that they, get suppressed. And so that's a good thing because it keeps us, safe, but it's also a bad thing because then, if somebody doesn't engage with your content, we all know that we get a lot of emails that they're kind of off your list. So one thing that we have been doing is actually running what I call interest campaigns. And they're literally campaigns to find out what people are interested in. So that way we can serve, more relevant content. There are about 4 million nurses in the US and we have about 2 million of them in our database. However, I have a ton of data gaps. So you were kind of asking about like what kinds of data are important. And we know we've got about 16 variables that we want to know about somebody, but I have a ton of gaps. So I actually have a report that I run that says, kind of what's your fill rate on this data field. And I have some that are super low. So I try and use any activity that I know about an individual to try and fill, some of those gaps. So if you're viewing content on our webpage, or if you attended an event, then I infer certain things, about an individual that way.
And Joe, sitting in your role and knowing shift NAFTA has made gathering towards data, what have you seen as a specific shift in like the executive team and even the volunteer leadership team becoming more action oriented around the data that they're collecting leading up to this time? And then has there been any expedited change based on COVID-19 and knowing that there may be some very hard and fast decisions that have to be made? They're going to help you guys evolve as an organization.
Well, I wouldn't say that we've made a quantum shift because of the crisis, because NAFSA was already pretty data focused. Right. I joined them in November, and from ANA actually. Jackie and I were colleagues for a while, but the focus on data was already there when I came on board, and we've expanded that even more. And as you can imagine, this has really proven the value of that. Right. I think the biggest impact of the data in terms of what we're doing on the ground has been to dispel some notions that that folks may have had just kind of as a hunch. And sometimes it reinforced it. Like sometimes the hunches were actually correct and we could show that they were correct. But there were also instances where people thought the membership wanted something when the data showed they really did not want that. They were not interested in that. And we could look to, well, you may think that they want this content, but 5 people looked at this article in our magazine. So, that is very powerful. I mean, you can't really argue with that. It's where the rubber meets the road. And I think that it's really good for the future of the association, because that way you're actually using science rather than people's opinions. Get away from the whole Lebowski, that's just your opinion, man. And and I think that's a good thing in the long run.
Dave, anything for you to add on kind of that? Has there been a shift in executives? I know you've been building that marketing stack. How is that proliferating data throughout the organization?
Yeah, we're still perfecting our dashboards and working through it. One of the key things that happened recently that was really interesting is that we had one group within the organization that through our AMS Personify had created a report on the unsubscribes of our members. And the membership team was very concerned that we had a real major problem with unsubscribes. And so what they were reporting, and it went up through the chain, was that we had like 1 in 3 members of our paid members. So we have 40,000 total members, of which 24,000 are paid, right? And of our paid members, 1/3 were unsubscribed, and it blew up. This is like December 23rd, of course, right? Blew up and everyone's freaking out. And yet on a daily basis, the marketing team is seeing in our emails, 0.1% of the recipients had unsubscribed, which doesn't equate to, 33% of your paid members or 8,000 people being unsubscribed. And so, we're able to do some digging over a period of time and realize that they were reporting on an old field in the database, not the field that was used in our integration between Personify and Marketo. And we're able to show that it was actually more like about a 5% of our members were unsubscribed, not 33%. Now, what we've done in reaction to that is we have a dashboard that's just on unsubscribes now, and we are reporting on probably a dozen different fields and ways to look at unsubscribes. By member, by non-member, by period of time, by email, by internal team that we're supporting in the campaigns that we're running. And we've got a level of granularity that kind of blows your mind from an unsubscribes perspective. And we're able to now show that and react to that on a regular basis. But it was really messy for a few weeks, getting through and finding the right data, and then reporting on that. But sometimes it's that first message that sticks in people's minds.
So you guys have told some, you guys are doing some amazing things, and a lot of you guys have really been in position because you've been looking at data for a while. You've been doing a lot of the right things, and you're pretty well positioned to adapt and evolve, as we've talked about. Probably a lot of people in the audience are thinking, well, we'd love to do that. Love to do some of these things. So we're all facing kind of the same uncertain future. So let's talk a little bit about thinking about what our audience members might be worried about or thinking about or hoping for. Let's dive in a little bit about what the future is going to bring based on where we are today. So I'm going to start with you, Jackie. And what are lessons that you're taking away from the current situation when it comes to content and how you build content and get it out there for your members?
So I mean, the good thing about what's going on right now is it's really an opportunity to pull in. So I think the tendency in marketing is to go wide, right? Everybody says, who's your target? I want everyone, all nurses know about this, right? Like I email everyone. So, this is really an opportunity to say, let's focus. Like, what are we trying to do? Who are we trying to reach? And that's a luxury. I think that this pandemic has really provided an opportunity for organizations to say, who are we at our core? What are we trying to do? And to really focus. The other thing that I would say is there's also a tendency in marketing, and we've talked a little bit about that today, to strive for the perfect, right? To say, I need the really expensive marketing system or I can't do it. I need a, $100,000, $1 million content marketing strategy or I can't do it. I need, kind of this or I can't do it. And the truth of the matter is, I think for each of our organizations, if you pick the hood up and you look underneath, it's a little messy. And so, I just would say, just start it. You don't have to have any money. to have some blogs. So, you can reach out to, your audience and say, hey, you're a thought leader in this particular topic. Will you write me a blog post? And 9 times out of 10, the person says yes. You may need to send it to an editor, but I would say, like, give yourself permission to just try some things. And then the nice thing about it is, if it works, then you've got some data to say, hey, this works, we should double down on it, we should invest in it. But for me, that's kind of been one of the things that has worked well for me, and one of the things that's a lot of fun, because otherwise you end up managing 15 social media channels and you do them all poorly. So I would say focus, and I would say give yourself permission to do things imperfectly and see how they work.
Joe, I'll ask you the same question about lessons learned.
So I think what Jackie was saying is absolutely correct. Like, the whole iterative learning process is so instructive and can take you in really good places. I can give you an example. We recently took our magazine digital, and so there were some benefits, some disadvantages to that, but we're moving through it. And one of the great benefits was being able to see exactly what people are looking at and reading, and for how long, and what it leads them to from that article. And we're learning fast and changing. We had a section in the magazine that we thought was going to kill it, and nobody cared. It was not being accessed at all. So it's gone now. We cut it because that time is expensive. That staff time is expensive, and it takes a lot of effort to put those things together. Move it quickly to things that are working. Find out the things that are being accessed, that are being engaged with, and double down on those with the time that you free up from the things that just aren't working. And it's, it happens. It's not the worst thing ever. And, it's something that everybody goes through. Just keep moving, don't stop, keep iterating, and, you'll get there.
So Dave, when you think both operationally and how you're running things at the organization and how your members are reacting to the evolving channels and content and data and all the things we've talked about, what makes you nervous? What keeps you up at night?
I thought you were going to ask me that previous question, but can I answer the previous question?
You can answer whatever you want. That's fine.
Yeah, I think it's a good one. What's really interesting, maybe a lesson learned, is that I think that there were some accelerators that were already in process that the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of put in hyperdrive. And one of them is around brand and content, and a move towards being authentic, more sensitive and empathetic to our members, and creating, as Jackie was saying, creating more specific, hyper-focused content in a sense, right? Like, we've learned around creating resources specific to the COVID-19 pandemic for our members has been instructive, and it's exactly what Jackie was talking about. So I think there's this acceleration towards authenticity, specificity, sensitivity, and empathy. Data, get rid of opinions, use data, and that's being pushed harder now. We're looking at data. I don't know about you guys, but I look at the COVID-19 data pretty often because I find it really fascinating. I love data, and I'm not freaked out by it. I just want to see more specific data. So I'm looking now at wards within DC, my ward 3, and then in the neighborhood level, how many COVID cases are there, right? Before it was just how many were in DC, which doesn't tell you a whole lot, right? So, but the more we understand data and can learn about it, the better off. Another real accelerator is video. There's just a massive acceleration towards the use of video and marketing in particular. And we've been doing some really interesting work with a group called Thoughtcast Media on remote directed video. So many of these video firms in the past would go on site and they would set up the lights and do all this stuff and work with you. Now they're able to do it through an iPhone app and be able to direct the individual to get testimonials, right? Get those stories, Jackie, that you were talking about, because video translates so much better than the written words many times. It doesn't replace it, but it's really powerful. And the last one for me is an accelerator for Agile. Joe, you were using that, iterative keyword that's so important within Agile marketing, and being iterative, strategic in your actions and how you assign responsibilities and activities, measuring regularly and then reacting and being a more and embracing agile marketing. There's so many really interesting things I think that are being accelerated there. So that's my like lessons learned around accelerators. What keeps me up at night, we ran a live stream of the convocation ceremony for our fellows yesterday, and I just, first time doing that, I didn't sleep. I woke up at like 3 a.m. realizing we can't use pomp and circumstance. Even though it's in the public domain, it would have gotten shut down midstream in YouTube because it's not in their audio library. So I did a ton of research to figure out, okay, what can we use, and found something that's acceptable. We ran it yesterday. It was flawless, no problems, but that certainly kept me up. Is like when you go into areas that are new to you, it gets you out of your comfort zone, and it just keeps me up at night regularly.
That's a great segue into my last question that I want all of you guys to give a good, concise, thoughtful answer to. You know, given all the capabilities and the new things going on, and you're driven by data, and you're thinking, you know, this is an opportunity. So what is something that you would like your organization or your team to pilot or try in the next couple of years?
So we're moving to the channel type of modality for all of our media. We want to be a media channel that goes through video, it goes through audio, it goes through the written word, just the whole kit and caboodle. And that's going to be a big change in how we like look at and envision the types of things that we produce.
Jackie, what about you?
So I'm struggling with this a little bit because I feel like everything that like I want to do, we're doing. Like we're taking steps to do it. Like I'm not a kind of sit around and wait person. So there isn't anything that I'm like, oh, I hope we get to that. So I guess I would say if there's anything that you know I like wish for, it's to be more integrated with our data, quite frankly. So we have a kind of master CRM, and then obviously, you know, I'm using HubSpot as a marketing tool that ties into it, but it's not, you know, it's not ideal. So I guess I would say for the whole organization to get more sophisticated around data and how to use data, and how to make data work for us. We look at a lot of numbers and a lot of reports, but I'd say, you know, how do we actually create actions against that?
And Dave?
For me, what I'd really love to get better at and focus more on is and experiment with is a video first content strategy. So look at how do we address and how do we approach this topic from a video first perspective. Do the video first and then maybe create some written content from it or other formats. So and Jackie, I'll sure you appreciate this because you're using HubSpot, and I did for 7 years and love the platform. But one of the thought leaders in the space is a guy named Marcus Sheridan. He's works for Impact Branding and Design, but also does his own speaking, and he's a real promoter of inbound marketing and the HubSpot platform. But a recent focus of his, what I would really like to look at more closely, is this concept of they ask you answer. He wrote a book about it. I would highly recommend checking out that book, Marcus Sheridan, They Ask You Answer. And the idea is you collect the types of questions your members are regularly asking you, and you create a content strategy around that. It's really pretty simple. And so if you have salespeople within your organization, if you have membership people on the front lines, if you have operational people fielding calls or IT or whatever, what are the regular questions your members are asking you? And how do you create content around answering those questions? And then where do they fit maybe within a funnel for new members? And then create that content in video. And that's really an area where I'd like to be able to focus on. It's easier said than done, but for the future, that's an area to really try out.
Great. Well, we've kind of reached the end of our discussion, so I'm going to ask each of you to think about, kind of given everything that's going on, when you give your closing thought here to our audience who's hung in here with us, what reassures you about the future, and what's that, thinking about that, what's the advice you give for everybody to, you know, follow the path? I'll start with you, Joe.
I think that the biggest thing that you can do is take a long view. This too shall pass, as they say. Keep it up. Don't stop what you're doing. You know, use data to justify your decision making, and keep going. Keep that entrepreneurial mindset, and we will come out of this crisis, I think, stronger than ever before.
Dave, words of wisdom.
I said it before, so I probably should have not said it, but like my thought is that downturns are the best time to invest in your marketing, not cut back. And that can be from a budget perspective, but it also can be from an activities perspective. Some organizations have less marketing to do right now. Maybe that's an opportunity to focus on how you're visualizing data. Maybe that's an opportunity to work on drawing out a marketing technology stack. Something simple. Connect HubSpot with SurveyMonkey and Wistia or Vidyard as your video platforms. Try some stuff out, iterate, but then also fight for your marketing dollars. Too often marketing departments are really hamstrung. We see at best 5% of total revenue of an organization in marketing budgets, let alone some of our for-profit counterparts who might have 10 to 20%, depending on how old the organization is. But fighting for the marketing dollars, and if you have data to be able to support that, and the successive campaigns that you've done to say, if we continue to invest here, we're going to come out of this much stronger than those organizations that don't.
And Jackie, you get to bring us home.
Yeah, I mean, great thoughts shared by Dave and Joe already. Yeah, I'd say for me, one of my secret weapons is I'm just an optimist. I think that as horrible as a global pandemic is, it also challenges us to think differently. It challenges us to work smarter. I'm just really embracing that and trying to, maximize that opportunity. I'd say the other thing that I try and do, and I actually would challenge all nonprofits specifically in the association space to do, is think like a for-profit company, think like a corporation. That will help you make better decisions. So don't be afraid to try some things.
Well, I know what reassures me is that we have such fantastic, forward-thinking, intelligent people in our community, such as you guys. Let's put content out there. So I hope everybody in the audience got a lot out of today. I know I personally feel smarter, and all I did was ask the question. So, thank everybody for their time, and thank you to our panel.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your additional perspectives, and we hope you found the program valuable. You're dropping a feedback form into the chat right now. We'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas for moving forward. We ask your big takeaways at the end because we are putting together a resource that rounds up some of the best responses. We'll share out this resource with you shortly, and we hope it'll be useful for you moving forward. We'll post a discussion video in a few weeks, but in the meantime, we're sharing links to 2 ASAE Research Foundation studies that will help you build on this discussion: ASAE ForesightWorks and Association Content Strategies for a Changing World. Thanks again, and have a great day.